Well, good morning and welcome to Reef and Fisheries, where we've come down to show you the very basics of float fishing. So if it's something you're not already out there doing, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll be able to go out and have the confidence to catch a few yourself. So let's start off taking a look at the tackle you're going to need. So float fishing, or waggler fishing as many people call it, I would advise getting a dedicated rod for the job. They are designed for this style of fishing and they just make your life so much easier. So I tend to use an 11-foot waggler for 95% of my fishing, and then I couple that with a small 3000 size reel, just because they're nice and lightweight, and the majority of your time while you're fishing like this you will be holding it, so it makes your fishing much more enjoyable. I load my reel with 6-pound main line. I would say if you know you're fishing for really big carp, I'd perhaps up that to 8-pound, and on the flip side, if you're only fishing for silverfish, you could always drop that down to 4-pound. But I'm not saying you have to spend a lot of money. I would just advise getting stuff that is designed for the job. So taking a look at the rig itself, again, I like to keep things really simple. So the float choice, I do like loaded wagglers. They're much easier to shot and all of the weight stays around the float end, so it makes casting that much easier. Now the way that I connect it, I run it between a couple of float stops. So one goes above the float, then the float goes on, and then 2 float stops just underneath it. And they grip the line nice and tight, so you can set it at what depth you wish to fish and it won't move anywhere. Looking at the shot, I do add 3 number 8s just below those 2 float rubbers, and then down the line, either 4 or 5 small number 8s, just to create a nice slow fall of your bait as you're casting out. I use a little 6-inch hook link, which I loop to loop that onto my main line. So it's really nice and straightforward, and you just pass the hook through the loop on its hook link, and then you just lasso it on. And today I've chosen to fish a little bait band because we're fishing a little pellet. So the rig is really nice and simple, and it will sort you out for pretty much all of your float fishing needs. So the next thing to think about is plumbing the depth of your swim. And for me, this is one of the most common mistakes people make when they're first getting into the sport. It's really important to know how deep your swim is, because if you want to fish on the bottom, guessing, you're going to next to no chance of getting it right. So it's really simple. To get yourself a nice lightweight plummet, pass your hook through the ring at the top, and then hook it into either the foam or the rubber at the bottom of the plummet. Now it's a case of casting into your chosen area, and what you want to happen initially is the plummet completely sink your float, so it goes under, well under the surface. Then you reel back in and you slide your float stops, I don't know, perhaps 3 or 4 inches at a time, and then you cast out again and repeat that process until your float sits just on the surface. It's at that point you know exactly how deep your swim is. Now I'm not saying that you have to fish on the bottom, but it's important to know how deep is if you want to fish half depth or something like that. You've done the hard work at the start of the session and you're all ready to catch a few fish. So you're almost all ready to go fishing, but I want to quickly talk you through the baits and the feeding because it is very important. So I've just picked a few of my favourites here. If I'm going to commercial, 4mm pellets always come with me. Fish absolutely love them. I've got a little bit of sweet corn. Again, you can't go wrong with it. And today I've just mixed up a little bit of ground bait. I would say that if I was going either in the winter or fishing for smaller fish, silverfish like that, I would always bring some maggots. And there's the obvious ones like bread and luncheon meat that you could take as well. So they're just a few of my personal favourites. The next thing is how you feed it. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make. They get to the session and at the start they'll throw one big handful and then sit there for a few hours and try and catch like that. You will catch fish, but trust me, you'll catch a lot more by creating competition in your swim. And for me personally, that's a case of either catapulting or throwing by hand, depending how far out you're fishing. Little and often, you know, 20, 30 pellets every 2 or 3 minutes. It makes the noise on the surface so the fish know there's feed there, and it will create that really aggressive feeding style that will definitely mean you catch more fish throughout the day. I'm going to give you one last tip in case the conditions aren't absolutely perfect like they are here today. If it's windy, it's really important to get your line sunk. So nice and easy to do, you cast past your spot that you're fishing, the rod tip goes under the water, and then 3 or 4 really quick turns the reel handle will ensure that your line is sunk from you here at the bank all the way to your float. So if you have got a crosswind, it's going to stop that, blowing your float and your hook bait away from where you're feeding, meaning it's much more efficient throughout the day. Well, there we go, a great couple of hours float fishing, and I'm sure if you follow those simple steps, you too will enjoy some great days fishing.